Well, hi everyone. It's this time. And across the room over there is Sam with this time. And over here is Tyler without this time. Great to see, well, almost virtually see all of you. Hi, it is a wonderful Sunday morning. In fact, I'm loving spring arriving. Went for a nice run now after a lengthy chat with some pastors and Tim Mackey. Really wonderful time. What a humble man, what a gifted man he is. Well, welcome to Sunday morning here at Genesis. We are so grateful to all of you. Thank you for signing on. Thank you for being flexible enough. I think we're about 8 weeks in now, hoping that it will change soon in whatever shape or form that is. But as long as it is what it is, we make it work. We make much of Jesus. We declare his praises. We love the church, laying down our lives for each other. And that I'm really grateful for. Secondly, in times like this, we do generally see two things happen. One, those who press in hard into the core, into the community, and we find each other, and it is a beautiful space, awkward space. Meryl met with someone this week, and do I hug? Don't I hug? Am I warm? Those are all funny, awkward moments because we're so jolly unused to all of that. But some of you, unfortunately, have drifted. And I would love to appeal to you today just to hit the handbrake, throw a beautiful U-turn, change down, and come speeding back into community. This is the time we really need each other. It's no good being out there on our own. We really do need to be together side by side. And then thirdly, today is a very special day because it's International Day. What do I mean by that? We are delighted that Matt Larson will be teaching. Now, Matt is a very dear friend. 10 years we've been friends. He's got a beautiful wife, Kristen, whom you'll meet. They have 5 amazing kids that you should meet. Leads a delightful church up in Thousand Oaks. Leads a family of churches, and he's on the collective leadership, the 7 couples who provide a direction setting for Genesis Collective International. And I am so delighted that Matt's going to be teaching the next part of Mark for us, but you'll also have the opportunity to have some greetings from a couple of couples who are part of Genesis Collective Leadership. I love them. They're amazing people. Some we've been friends with for 10 years, some almost 40 years. Quite amazing. And our journey together has been amazing. So enjoy the morning, enjoy the worship, enjoy the stories, enjoy Matt's delightful teaching, and we'll land it together with some breaking of bread, back end, and may God minister to you. More than just an online event, may it be a family encounter. God bless you. See you soon.
Hi guys, it's Rob and Linda here from Dubai. We've been leading the church here for just about 9 years now, and I'm going to hand over to Rob.
Yeah, the church that we lead is called Well of Life. I think many of you know about the church. We've had a number of Genesis folk across there, and you guys have been an incredible blessing to us, and we've had the privilege of being with you once as well. What do we think about when we pray for you guys? I love the fact that you get to reach a whole lot of people that perhaps don't really feel like they're that interested in church or feel like they're done with church. And so I'm really praying that God would use you to reach all sorts of people that can be incredible gifts to the kingdom of God, but perhaps felt like they didn't have a place before they met Genesis and the family that is Genesis. Anyway, we trust that you have a great day. God bless you guys.
Bye.
My name is Keith.
And I'm Michelle, and we lead Kingsgate Church in Kingston upon Thames, which is in southwest London. Keith and I grew up in South Africa, and we have lived here for 25 years now, and we've been leading Kingsgate Church for the last 9 years.
And we're also part of the Genesis Collective team, and I'm sure that we've met a number of you at the Malibu conferences and are hoping to see you again soon.
When we pray for your church, one of the things that I pray for at the moment in these strange times is that God would strengthen you individually in your walk with him. And then as a church, that you will also be strengthened, and that our churches will grow during this time, and that people will be drawn to Jesus.
We also pray that you would grasp in increasing measures the wonder of the gospel, and that the revelation of God's love for you would strengthen you, encourage you, and inspire you. So we hope you have an amazing weekend, and we love you lots.
We
Bye-bye.
hope to see you soon.
Hey, what's up, Genesis?
I'm Andy.
And I'm Jackie, and we lead Restored Uptown in San Diego.
It's International Day, and I know we're pretty far away from you guys. So, but I just want to say that whether or not you know us or have seen our faces, we love you. We care about you, and the type of church you guys are seeking to plant, the type of community you're seeking to be, is such a valuable thing right now. A safe place for people to eat meals with one another, to love one another, to create, again, a safe place where people can encounter Jesus, explore who he is and what he's done, and are seeking to love one another like he has loved you. And so I just want to say, I want to pray in this season for you. I know there's a lot going on with a pandemic, and for your church, which is, it's a church, but you got a lot of college students. Finals are coming up. So you guys have a lot going on, but I just want to say, in all seriousness, I want to pray that the God of all hope would give you endurance. That word endurance just really pops to me for you, that you guys would feel encouraged to continue on, even when this gets hard, knowing that the type of community you guys are seeking to be is more important than ever.
Yeah, and we truly are looking forward to being with you guys one day in the future. And we love you guys. And that's it.
See you guys later. Love you guys.
Bye.
Hey everyone, it's Sam. I'm so excited to be back with you this week, letting you know what's going on in our community. That was such a gift to be able to be cared for and loved on by people all around the world that genuinely just really care about us as a community. And we just want you to know that you are known and you are loved by us and by people all around the world. And that being said, as a community, we want to acknowledge the pain that has come out of losing our dear friend, Ben Kelly. So we just want to pause and take a moment to say we are with you and we are for you in this time. And we really are, we're grieving and rejoicing in the life that is Ben Kelly. So if you do need help in this time, or you just want to talk, feel free to reach out to Tyler and I or Chris, and know that we will be there for you. You are loved and you are seen and you are known, and we just want to be there in that time. Some other areas in our community that we just want to make sure we're staying together in is our Wednesday prayer Zoom. It is such a sweet time where things from the community that need to be prayed for, people that need to be prayed for, we can come together. So if you want to be a part of that, at 12 o'clock on Wednesdays, the link in our bio, or also just reach out if you're ever confused when anything's happening. Going from there, we have our small groups. It's a time where in the week we can just kind of connect and see where everyone is. So if you're not in one of those, you guys, I really do encourage you to reach out to us so we can place you in one of those smaller communities, and you can just not be doing this alone. So yeah, that's another sweet opportunity to be together. And I also want to encourage you, if you don't know when anything's happening and you have no idea, like, oh, what's happening on Instagram, or Sam said this, but I forgot when she said it. Also, you can be a part of our email listing, and we send out all that information. So you can always be connected whenever you want to be connected. So I get to just share with you a little bit on my process in worship and before we start worship. And the question I've been asking myself the last couple weeks, honestly, has been, why do I worship? Because the last couple weeks, I've just felt so awkward. I've had one week where I was with Caleb's family and another week where I was alone with a laptop. And both times I just didn't know what to do with myself. I do miss corporate worship, but in this season, I had to ask myself, Sam, why do you worship? And I was really brought back to this question and this feeling of, what was it like when you first encountered the love of Jesus? What was it like, Sam? And I just really got brought back to this idea of I was dead and Jesus made me like experience true life with what he did for us. And if any of you know my story, that was a huge shift in my life. And because of that shift, I never want to stop thanking God for what he's done in my life. I never want to stop praising who Jesus is and what he's done for me. So as a community, we want to put away awkwardness. As a community, we want to push in and say, Jesus, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. So I hope that encourages you, and I really do pray that we have a sweet time together. Love you all. Bye.
Good morning, Genesis. I'm Tyler, and this morning I get the pleasure of worshiping with Miley and Caleb, and we've just been smitten during rehearsal because we haven't gotten to play together for a long time. So it's a joy. And this morning, even from a distance, a social distance, we choose just to press in a bit deeper in worship. So thank you for worshiping with us this morning. Our heart is just to make much of Jesus. That's what we do. And so as we begin to worship, why don't you just pray with us this morning? Jesus, we love you so much. Would every word, would every song, every bit of our heart posture just glorify you and enthrone you and make much of you, Jesus. So right now, even when it's hard to press in a bit deeper in our living rooms, we know you never compromise to press in even deeper in sacrifice for us. And so we just pour out that same oil onto you, worshiping you in uncomfortability, worshiping you in chaos, worshiping you in uncertainty, Jesus, because you are so, so, so worth it. We love you, Jesus. Receive our offering and incense of worship to you today, God. Jesus paid it all to him. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white. Sing that again. Jesus paid it all to him. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. Sing this out, oh praise the one. And oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up. Sing that again. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. Sing made in your image. Made in your image. Formed by your hand. Breathing your breath in and out with. Living now in you. Sing that again. Made in your image. You don't withhold your love from us. Arms open wide upon the cross. You give no matter what the cost. Jesus, we see you in all of these words. All of these words your hands have made. A billion stars stretched out in space. These are just echoes of your grace. Jesus, we see you, sing you are. You are a generous giver. Your mercy overflows. Your blessing is a river, on and on and on it goes. You are an endless fountain. You're filling up my life. My heart will sing your praises. Jesus, you be glorified. Oh, oh. Jesus, you meet us. Jesus, you meet us in our pain. Your mercy meets us every day. Your love will never turn away. Oh, Jesus, we see you. You are a generous giver. Your mercy overflows. Your blessing is a river, on and on it goes. You are an endless fountain. You're filling up my life. My heart will sing your praises. Jesus, you be glorified, and on and on. Oh, on and on. Yes, Jesus, you be glorified, and on and on. Oh, on and on. Jesus, you be glorified. Jesus, oh Jesus, just singing so much better. You're so much better. You're so much kinder than anything we think you are. Your love is deeper. Yes, your love is wider. Open our eyes to see than anything we think you are. Your love is deeper. Your love is wider. Open our eyes to see you, God. We just love you, Jesus. Yeah. Just let him speak to your heart. The Holy One in full control. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Let's sing this chorus one more time. You are a generous giver. Your mercy overflows. Your blessing is a river, on and on it goes. You are our endless fountain. You're filling up my life. My heart will sing your praises, Jesus. You be glorified. Sing, I searched the world. Oh, I've searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise, man's empty praise, and treasures that fade are never enough. And you came along. Together. Now every desire is now satisfied right here in your love. Sing this chorus. There's nothing. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, and I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. The God of the mountain, the God of the mountain, is the God of the valley. Oh, there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Sing that chorus. There's nothing. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, no, one more. No, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Sing, you turn mourning to dancing.
You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. One more time. The only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Let's keep singing that out. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh. Yes, God.
Good morning, Genesis Church. My name is Kristen Larson. Matt will be on here in a minute, but I just wanted to take a minute and say good morning and introduce ourselves and our family to you. Like I said, we are Matt and Kristen. We've been married for almost 20 years now. It'll be 20 years in January. And we have 5 kids. They are Andrew, Jeremy, Tyler, Lily, and Rosie. And they range from 17 down to 3 years old. They're so much fun, and I would love to share a picture with you, but we've been in quarantine for 3 months, and I don't know that my 15-year-old has worn a shirt in 3 months, and they all have mom haircuts. So we'll introduce them to you later. But we just love you guys so much, and we really do speak about you often in our home. Our kids actually send love to you also. As we were talking this morning, they were just excited to hear that we were able to be recording this and be talking to you this week. So sending love from our whole family. Actually this morning, when we were doing our family worship time, we were spending some time reading through Psalms to try and articulate our praises to God. And I wanted to share with you one of the Psalms that our 15-year-old brought up this morning. His name's Jeremy. It's Psalm 105. And it says this. It says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, call on his name, make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him, sing praises to him, tell of all of his wondrous works. Glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek him rejoice in the Lord. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his presence continually. Remember the wondrous works that he has done, his miracles, the judgments he has uttered. O offspring of Abraham, his servant, O children of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all of the earth. He remembers his covenant forever, the word that he commanded for 1,000 generations." As we were just reading that this morning, it was just impressed upon our hearts that how important it is to remember the things and speak about the things that God has done. Even in this time of like so much confusion and so much difficulty, God has done so many great things. So just wanted to encourage you along with our family this morning to speak about the things, the great things that God has done in your life, to speak about the great things that God has done in building the community of Genesis Church, to remember those stories of his power, because in telling those stories, it builds our hope for the things that he is doing now and the things that he wants to do through us. And I think that's been something that Matt and I have had this weird feeling since the very first day of quarantine of privilege to be living during this time. It's not an easy time to be living through. It's certainly creating a lot of really painful things, but it's this feeling of privilege to be the people of God in a time such as this. And we just are so grateful to be walking this time and as the people of God with communities like yours. And we just love you guys so much and are praying for those great things to be done in and through you, and that we will have many stories to tell for generations to come of what God has done through these times. So just wanted to encourage you with that and say hello. And I'm going to invite Matt on and pray for him as he gets ready to teach. Hey.
Hey
See
guys.
you. This one's Matt.
Hello.
All right, let me pray. Jesus, I just thank you so much for who you are, for all that you have done. From creation to the cross, to establishing hope for our future that is immovable. God, you are beyond anything that we can even imagine. And yet you reach down and you want to partner with us, and you want to partner with us for such a time like this. And I thank you for that. Pray for Matt now as he teaches from your word, that you would speak through him, that your words would just come alive into our hearts as we hear them. And that we would be able to follow you faithfully and bring contagious hope into this hurting world as we walk close to you during this time. Jesus, we love you. In your name, amen.
Thanks, babe.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
All right, well, good morning, Genesis Church. Great to be with you today. I'm very excited to be sharing from God's Word. For us at Anthem Church in Thousand Oaks, we've been going through the book of Daniel, and we plan on going through the book of 1 Peter starting in the fall. And the reason that we're going through those two books is this theme of exile that runs through those two books is something that's really important to us. You guys are actually, this series is called The New Exodus, and there's a similar element to the Exodus of Israel. Just what does it mean for us to be people who have a home elsewhere, and we are on a journey towards that, but we still find our citizenship here on some levels? It's kind of a strange thing. And the reason that I bring that up is even as I preach this message, I'm preaching into two contexts. The first is kind of like if coronavirus had never come and we're all just here as Americans or wherever you're from and we're just living our lives. The reality is you're still in exile if you're a follower of Jesus, meaning your citizenship is in heaven, but here you are on earth living as an ambassador, going through life for the sole purpose of giving Jesus glory and letting his presence be known on the earth. And so there's that sense of being in exile. That's why Jeremiah 29 is such an amazing prophecy, is we are exiles here on earth. Peter uses that language to describe us. The second context has to do with coronavirus. We're here and life is so different. To be honest, like my family is longtime Southern California. My great-grandpa grew up in Long Beach in the 1900s, like actually was born in 1900. And so 1918, he was 18 years old when the Spanish flu hit. His senior year of high school football got canceled, like all of that stuff, very similar experience. But since then, about 102 years ago, there hasn't been this kind of experience that people have gone through. So it really is something very unique in my lifetime, in your lifetime, even in Chris's lifetime. Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to call you out for being older than me. But you get the sense that there is this reality that we're not going to go through this all that often. It's a pretty unique phase. And so we want to try and understand also, what do we do with life in this context? You guys are in the book of Mark, and I've been asked to teach on Mark chapter 6. And so we're going to talk through this. It's a great scripture. So let me read Mark 6, verses 7 through 13, and then we'll dive in together. It says this, "And he called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. He charged them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not put on 2 tunics. And he said to them, whenever you enter a house, stay there until you depart from there. And if any place will not receive you and they will not listen to you when you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them." So they went out and proclaimed that people should repent. And they cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and healed them. So there's a great context for this passage. If you go back in Mark to chapter 3, verse 13, it says, he went up on the mountain and he called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him and he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. So what we get is chapter 3 and chapter 6. I don't know how many of you guys have started a new job and you've had a boss sit you down and just say, all right, here's what I'm going to have you do here. And some of those things are a little bit idealistic or future or things that you'll grow into, the role that eventually that company wants you to play or wants to use your skills to fulfill. Well, that's what Jesus is doing in chapter 3. He's sort of setting the table for the future. Hey, I want you to come with me, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to equip you to go, and you're going to preach, and you're going to cast out demons. Like, that's the world that I'm inviting you into. So when Jesus gave these guys this role, it was important to him that they know what they're doing. And then here in chapter 6, it's this training moment. We haven't even gotten to like the Great Commission yet where he sends them out on their own, but this is a full-blown training moment where Jesus gives them this incubated space to put some effort into the things that he's been training in them. So it's a great passage for that reason. Now, here's what's going on in this process. Jesus has been making his disciples into disciples. I was once told by a mentor that you could walk into a room of 100 Christians and say the word disciple, and you would get 100 different definitions of what that word means. It's gotten a little bit watered down in our Christian culture. It's hard to even know what people mean when they say disciple anymore. And so really in the last, 30 or 40 years, a lot of Christians have started trying to find some different language synonyms, like similar concepts, but trying to find different language. And one of the ones that has emerged as really helpful is the idea of being an apprentice to Jesus. It's functionally what a disciple was. You could basically use the same word, apprentice and disciple. And Jesus was apprenticing them, but for us, it's such a different, it carries such a different weight, because when we think of apprenticeship, you might think of like apprenticing as an auto mechanic, or apprenticing as a lawyer, or apprenticing as a teacher. It's a terminology that we still use in the professional realm to describe the development process into a role. And Jesus, part of what he's doing with his disciples, he is establishing their character. He's building them into to men and women of Yahweh. But one of the things that he's doing here is he is actually apprenticing them to a role. That's what he was saying in Mark chapter 3. So let's dig into Mark chapter 6 a little bit and talk through what it means to be apprentices of Jesus and how we can learn from this passage. So starts off. Verse 7 says, and he called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2. All right, so the first thing that we look at is this idea of being sent. Now, the word to send is apostolane, which is the verb form of the word apostolos. Now, if you don't know Greek, that's totally fine. You don't need to know Greek at all, but you might have heard the word apostle a number of times. And what we're getting at is that Jesus uses the verb form of apostle to send his disciples. That's what he's doing. Now, what you see in the New Testament is over time, the concept of being an apostle actually takes on some pretty significant meaning. It means a sent one. And that's something that we're actually going to hold on to. We'll come back when we kind of apply this passage to our lives and talk about what it means to live an apostolic life. But what you see in the New Testament is this formation of an idea of a gift of apostle. And that's something that develops, and Paul talks about his apostleship often, and Ephesians 4 talks about apostles being one of the gifts that Jesus gives to the church. This is actually a slightly different thing. That Jesus, when he called them, he began to send them, and there's this idea of part of our apprenticeship to Jesus is understanding the concept of being sent. We may not all have the gift of apostleship. When we read that in Ephesians 4, that's not going to describe everybody. But there's another element to this in that every follower of Jesus is a sent one. That is very real. Again, like I said, we'll come back to it, but I want you to just sort of hold on to that idea of what it means to be a sent one. That's what Jesus is doing with his disciples in this passage, is sending them out. Okay, The next thing that we notice from this passage is that Jesus gives some very strange instructions about what they can and cannot take. He charged them to take nothing for their journey, verse 8, except a staff. So you get a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts. All right, so I don't want you to take anything extra that would be a provision. Jesus is specifically banning them from provision. So a staff has a functional purpose, maybe a walking stick. I'm guessing they're not taking any sheep with them. But a walking stick, essentially, you can take that. But I don't want you to take any of the things that are provisions for you. Those are banned from this particular thing. Then he says you can wear sandals. You can be doing a lot of walking, so you can wear sandals. But don't put on 2 tunics. That's an extra. That's a luxury. That's something I don't want you to take on this journey. Jesus' apprenticeship was one that was cultivating the skills of disciple makers, but also he's developing the practice of people living in dependence on him. Jesus, in teaching us to pray in Matthew chapter 6, talks about, give us this day our daily bread. Yeah, oftentimes we look at that and we compare that to manna in the Old Testament, this idea of God providing a literal daily bread, but then there's also this sense of Jesus teaching us dependence on him to provide the things that we need for today, to carry out his mission today. And Jesus is putting that into practice as he sends out these disciples to go and do this ministry. I want you to go out specifically with nothing extra. And you're going to trust that you'll be provided for. It's part of what he's training in them, part of what he's apprenticing in them. If you have your Bibles, turn over to Philippians chapter 4. Sorry, I forgot to put my ribbon in Philippians 4. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. This is Paul writing. And he says this. He says, not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So Paul specifically talks to the Philippians about this life of, it's not about having nothing. It's not that every believer, every day of their life, whatever possession you have needs to immediately be launched out into the world. That's not what Jesus is precisely saying here. But he is trying to teach us a posture of dependence. And Paul articulates a down-the-road posture of dependence. There have been seasons where I've had plenty, and there have been seasons where I've had nothing. What I've learned is how to be content, regardless of what I have, because I'm not living with those as the objectives. And Jesus here is teaching his disciples to live without those things as the objectives. You don't need that stuff. You need me. And I will provide for you. And Jesus is teaching them how they can depend on him. It's such a powerful thing. All right, one more observation, and then we'll kind of get into what to do with this passage. The shake the dust off their feet. I don't know if you read that and you're just like, oh, that seems like kind of, I don't know, like rude. Why is Jesus teaching his disciples to be rude? So the idea of shaking the dust off their feet, just to give you a little bit of context for this. Jews loved Israel deeply. It was the promised land. And when they left Israel and came back, it was common practice for first century Jews to shake the dust off their feet, in a sense, so as to not contaminate the Holy Land. So it was actually kind of a common phrase that really just talked about almost like respecting the land, the Holy Land, God's promise, like that type of a thing. It was sort of like a picture of acknowledgement that when we walk into Israel, we're walking into something that God has provided for us. So that was kind of the idea of the phrase. So Jesus grabs that phrase and he brings it into this moment where he's commissioning his disciples into this training ground. And he says, look, you're going to go village to village, town to town. You're going to preach the gospel, heal the sick, cast out demons, all of that. But when you come up against resistance, what I'm going to have you do is shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. Now, just to give you an idea of why he would say that, Jesus commands his disciples to shake the dust off their feet when people reject the message of God. He's teaching them to remind Israel that to reject the Messiah is to reject the promise of God. In the same way that they wouldn't trample on the Holy Land with contaminated feet, Jesus is reminding them by sending out his disciples with this message of invitation. It's a call to repentance. God desires you to be with him, and he's inviting you into his story. But if you reject that message, just know that you're rejecting the promise of God. And what we'll see is that idea is developed throughout the New Testament, that just because you're Israel doesn't mean you're saved. That was never the full promise. It was always a promise of land that was pointing to a Messiah that was the fulfillment of the promise of God. And so there's this desire in Jesus to communicate to Israel, do not reject the Messiah that has been given. That would be the rejection of the promise of Yahweh. So I just wanted to give you an idea. If you're wondering why is that such a big deal, it's a huge deal that Jesus is teaching his disciples how to communicate, even as people are rejecting the message, to show them the importance of their rejection, the weight of their rejection. It is not insignificant. So what we want to do is we want to take this passage and kind of figure out, okay, so what do we do with this? How does this shape our lives? And the biggest challenge that I want to kind of invite you into is to live as an apprentice to Jesus. This is language that we actually use pretty frequently at Anthem TO. I'm not sure if you guys use it frequently at Genesis, but if you've heard from John Mark Comer, we basically stole it directly from him, this idea of our apprenticeship to Jesus. And by the way, he stole it directly from Dallas Willard. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so the idea of living as an apprentice to Jesus is a critical element of our posture as Christians. So first of all, John Mark and others will break this idea of our apprenticeship down into three categories: to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to do what Jesus did. So let's just walk through those really quickly. The first one, to be with Jesus. Now the passage opens up in verse 7, and he called the 12 and began to send them out. The fact that Jesus called them and they were there and ready to respond, I know it's just like a little narrative blip, but it's kind of a thing. That Jesus, as he was going, had this group of disciples around him that were waiting to hear his words. They were dedicated to hearing from Jesus. And part of how we now, as followers of Jesus, filled by the Spirit, posture ourselves to hear from Jesus is to be with him, to be near him, to be in his word, in his Spirit, pursuing him, posturing ourselves to hear from the Lord. I don't know how familiar you are with the New Testament, but how often do you hear the phrase, let him who has ears to hear, hear? There's a call on people. Do you have ears to hear? I mean, biologically, we'd all say, of course I have ears to hear. Look, but Jesus is saying that there's a different level of hearing that he wants to invite us into. I want you to not miss the message that I'm saying to you. And right here, Jesus calls the apostles, calls the disciples, and they're right there and ready for him. So here's the challenge. The first one is to be with Jesus. And while that's not a physical proximity for us, that's a posture proximity. That's a readiness. That's cultivating a practice of being in the scriptures and in the Spirit so that when the Lord invites us to do something, when he speaks, we are ready. Primed and ready to respond immediately. Okay, so being with Jesus, it's one of the key elements of our apprenticeship to him. The second thing is to be like Jesus. So we talk about being a sent one or living an apostolic lifestyle. So here's John 20:21. Jesus says, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you. Now, I operate under the belief that every follower of Jesus is a sent one, meaning at the Great Commission in Matthew 28, when Jesus said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. That commission was not given exclusively to the people that were there with him in that moment, but it is a perpetuated command. We see that because throughout the book of Acts, there's a perpetuated command of sending. It's to keep on going. And the message of the gospel grows and multiplies and expands because people heard that commission of Jesus, even if they weren't there with him in that moment, and they adopted it as a commission to their own life. So you, if you are a follower of Jesus, are a sent one. To become like Jesus means to live your life today as a sent one. an apostolic life. Here am I, send me. What do you need? Where am I going? How can I serve? What are the things for me to do? And we look at the world through the lens of Jesus has sent me here to fulfill a purpose. How do I best fulfill that purpose with my life, with my choices, with my words, with my thoughts, with my relationships, with my money? Those are the postures of a sent one. And the last one, we talk about doing what Jesus did. He called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over unclean spirits. And then down in verse 12, so they went out and proclaimed that people should repent. They cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and healed them. Okay. Jesus gave them authority. In that moment, he gave them authority. I don't know if he took it back, but the authority was Jesus's to give. And until that moment where he gets ready to send them out, you can question, did they have that authority before that moment? But Mark, who's really writing Peter's gospel here, he mentions that Jesus gave them authority. He spoke it over them. He empowered them. And they went out in his authority, not their own, but in his authority. So the question is that authority limited, or is that authority that we walk in today? If Jesus says in Matthew 28, I know I mentioned this passage a couple of times, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, therefore go. If Jesus says, you will be my witnesses, if we are called his ambassadors, if we are called his spirit, or given his spirit and called his body, those questions carry a sense of authority with them. And that's not authority to demand from people, but it is authority to do the things that Jesus did. Now, I cannot explain why not every person that we pray for gets healed. I can't explain why every demon that we interact with doesn't get cast out, or every person that we call to repentance doesn't respond. There are elements of the authority that Jesus has given us to go that still Jesus holds the authority, and he does give it to us, but it's his, not ours. It's his power, not our power. It's his authority, not our authority. We're on essentially borrowed authority that we go in the name of Jesus. And so my encouragement to each one of us is to live as Jesus lived, to go out with this authority that Jesus had and with the confidence that Jesus had, and to carry out the ministry that Jesus did. It's not a guarantee that every time you will see the same fruit that Jesus did. We saw that in the New Testament as the disciples continued to live their lives of faith. There were moments where they demonstrated great power and great authority, and there were moments that they were prevented from doing that same thing. That's fine. And we trust the Lord and his sovereign will to dispense or do his work as needed, but we are to walk in that posture of what Jesus did. He's asked us to do that same thing, to call people to repentance, to cast out demons, and to heal the sick. Okay, next thing. As you look at this and you see the challenge to go out on the journey, no bread, no bag, no money, but wear sandals, but no tunics, no second tunic. You can wear one tunic, just don't wear two. No naked evangelism. All right, so when you think about this, the call of Jesus is to go out and to trust him. One of the best ways for us to demonstrate our trust in Jesus is to cultivate a posture of generosity. Okay, what Jesus is demonstrating here is that I want you to go out and you don't need all the stuff. You don't need mountains of cash in the bank account. You don't need everything extra so that when you start to run out, you have ready. There are elements of wise stewardship in the scriptures, but there's also this moment where we run up against this invitation to live a life of dependence. And maybe here's a balance of wise stewardship and investing and the future and all of that type of thing with Jesus' radical call to live a totally dependent life on him. And it has to do with our posture. In our posture, does everything belong to the Lord? Everything. Paul said it himself, I know how to live in abundance and I know how to live in need, meaning there were times where Paul was flush with cash and there were times where he had not a dime to his name. There were moments where Paul worked night and day, like with the Thessalonians, so as not to be a burden to them, meaning he went into a community to minister, and instead of getting a paycheck from the Thessalonians, he made sure that they didn't pay him a dime. He worked his tail off so he wasn't a burden to that community. He wanted to do that. But then there were other times where Paul went in and he ministered and he was getting funded from the outside. If you ever read the book of Philippians, it's Paul's thank you letter for the funding that they provided him to be able to go to Macedonia and do some church planting. That's the whole context of the letter of the Philippians. So I just, in that, my goal for this is to say, I want to encourage you as a apprentice to Jesus to live a simple posture. Have minimal attachments to the things of this world. Be generous and ready to give. Posture yourself after that. For us as a church, we live in Thousand Oaks, a very wealthy place. You guys are largely in Costa Mesa, greater Orange County area, very wealthy place. We have to discipline ourselves to generosity, or we slowly just, our fingers just wrap back around the dollars, the theoretical dollars, or the ones that are out there. We clench so tightly to those things. And so we have to practice and discipline ourselves to generosity, to peel our fingers back and say, Lord, here, this belongs to you. So every year for us as a church, we've made a decision to do an annual give, where we take all of the money that comes in for a week, every dollar, we pump it up for weeks before, and we give 100% of that away to church planting efforts, to local ministries, and to global initiatives, things that are happening around the world. And it's exciting. Just to give you an idea, I'm going to throw out numbers that are not correct, but on average, our weekly giving might be somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000. And our last Celebrate Generosity was somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000. So just, if you think about it, a 10 times give happens. And it's such a powerful moment where we just get to send that money out. And there's joy and celebration about that opportunity. When you live a simple life, it actually produces, if you've heard in the Bible, God loves a cheerful giver, it actually produces the joy of being able to go out in simplicity. How many of you have done that before, where you've gone out and you've decided, all right, I'm going to trust the Lord for provision in this mission, in this, as I go right now, I'm going to go out and trust him to provide. And you've watched him provide for you in those moments. Have any of you ever experienced that before? I've heard story after story after story. We've gotten to experience it as a church where we just walk by faith, not trying to manufacture, but trusting that God will provide, and he meets us in those places. It's beautiful. Love it. And Jesus is apprenticing us into this life of dependence. I want to encourage you as apprentices to grow your dependence on Jesus. So as we wrap this up, one of the big questions that we just always want to be asking is what might God be saying to us through this passage? Two contexts, our bigger exile, followers of Jesus living in a world that's not our home, and our micro exile, being isolated in our homes, living in quarantine, that type of a thing. Well, what might God be saying to us through this passage? And here's the thing I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to live an apostolic life. So when you think of quarantine, being locked down, safer at home, in your homes, in your rooms, with your roommates, with your families, wherever you are, I want you to think that even in this, Jesus has said, as the Father has sent me, even so I'm sending you. What you can look at your life, the way that you can look at your life is through the lens of a sent one. And maybe right now is a time where you are between Mark 3 and Mark 6. You're learning, you're growing, you're being shaped and cultivated. Maybe the sending has a cap on it, but honestly, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. We've heard, again, story after story of incredible sending elements that are happening even now in quarantine. People being able to speak to their neighbors like they've never spoken to their neighbors before. Opportunities to pray for people who are hurting and confused and trying to sort through the difficulties of life. Being able to feed and provide for people in need. The opportunities are substantial, and part of where we need to be right now is posturing ourselves and saying, okay, I'm an apprentice to Jesus, ready to be sent. Are you ready to send me, Lord? Because I'm ready to be sent. Whatever you have for me, cultivate my character, shape me, ready me. I want to be used by you. Guys, I want to take a moment and pray for you, pray for Genesis Church, and thank you for taking a moment to listen to me talk through Mark 6. I hope this was encouraging to you. So I'd love the opportunity to pray for you, and then we'll take some time to respond. Jesus, we come before you as humble apprentices. You are so faithful to us. You see our future. You see our gifting. You see our decisions. You see our relationships. You know those things. And you have this picture in your mind of how to best put us to work for your kingdom, for your glory. And I pray over Genesis Church right now. I just pray that you would speak loudly. And I pray for Genesis Church that they would be with you, that they would be seeking your name, your voice, your presence, so that as you speak to them, they are ready to hear. I pray that there would be just a deep readiness in this church to hear you, Jesus. So both, Lord, would you be speaking and would they be hearing? And what comes out of that, when you speak and they hear, Lord, I cannot wait to see the fruit that you produce from that. Jesus, we love you. We praise you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Guys, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share God's word with you. It's a response time for the church, and so I will hand it over and let you guys respond from this point forward. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you soon.
In the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender. You are breaking new ground. You are breaking new ground. So make me a vessel, make me an offering, make me whatever you want me to be. I came here with nothing, but all you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. And in the crushing, in the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender. You are breaking new ground. You are breaking. Yes, you are breaking new ground. So make me a vessel, make me an offering, make me whatever you want me to be. I came here with nothing, so many